Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. What might be an ugly ship to one individual might represent a lifetime of adventure and excitement for another person. So keep that in mind as we break down all of these terribly ugly ships. One of the big problems with the Old Republic Legends period is that the timeline is just way too long and confusing, and therefore ship designers from this period of time don't do a really good job at showing the progression of technology and design choices. And so the ships from the Old Republic era, around 4000 BBY, are relatively similar to what the Rebels are fielding during the Clone Wars period. And the same thing could be said about the Sith ships from thousands of years ago compared to the more modern ones we see during the Galactic Civil War. Now, if we head back even further in time, around 6,000 years before the Battle of Yavin during the Old Sith Empire, we begin seeing some really strange designs, like this Derriphan-Class Battleship. During its time period, the Derriphan was considered a behemoth of a vessel and could supposedly take on 6 Republic capital ships at once. But to the modern Star Wars fan, this ship was quite small at only 200 meters in length. It was less than 1/8 the length of an Imperial-class Star Destroyer. Upon closer inspection, the ship design isn't very clean either, with all sorts of different towers and shapes sticking out of the main body in random directions. In some representations of the Derriphan-Class Battleship, it almost looks gothic in design and like it belongs in the Warhammer 40k universe. The Old Republic didn't fare that much better when it came to ship designs during this period of time. For almost 4,000 years, they would essentially rely on the Hammerhead cruiser as their main ship of the line. Then you had the Inexpugnable-Class tactical command ship, which generally served as the flagship for larger Old Republic fleets. But what this ship really was just a mobile space station and air traffic control tower. While it was terrific at coordinating a fleet of Hammerhead cruisers, it lacked offensive and defensive capabilities. And it was awkward looking, with its large, round-shaped main superstructure and vertical starfighter hangar doors below it. While the Mandalorians of modern time were known for beautiful ships like the Coronet or the Fang Fighter or the Aurore-Class fighter, in more ancient times, Mandalorian ships were brutal, savage, and lacked any kind of aesthetic value. Take the JeHavey'ir-Type Dreadnought, for instance. The word Kandosi means indomitable in Mandoa. This was a ship based on a variety of stolen technologies the Mandalorians had acquired from their defeated enemies. The result was a pieced-together ship with aggressive lines and a bulky and unbalanced whale-like superstructure. To make things even uglier, the Mandalorians of this period favored the use of nuclear warheads, which oftentimes ruined entire planets and made the battlefield heavily radioactive. Accompanying the Kandoshi-type Dreadnought was the JeHavey'ir-Class assault ship. JeHavey'ir means surprise your enemies and shoot them in the face in Mandoa. These ships strangely looked like a droid head of some kind with a short stub of a neck. The rounded area at the top of the ship is a classic basilisk design that can be seen in other Mandalorian ships like the Pyramid-type Battleship, which is also really ugly and should be on this list, along with the Shadlar-type troop ship, the Meteor-class Q-carrier, and the new Crusader Q-carrier. See, the Mandalorians were probably one of the more practical warrior races out there. They would essentially absorb the best aspects of enemy factions they have defeated. The Basilisks used to be a sentient race of lizards. That was before the Mandalorians met them. You see, the Basilisks were really competent warriors and the Mandalorians loved a challenge, so they decided to take them on and basically destroyed their entire planet as a result. Whatever remained of the Basilisk society was enslaved by the Mandalorians, and they were basically turned into war mounts. After a few generations of breeding their enemies, they essentially became non-sentient and were just dumb beasts of labor. Once the Basilisks died out, the Mandalorians would use semi-sentient combat droids, which were shaped exactly like the Basilisks. The fact that most Mandalorian ships of this period were inspired by Basilisk design shows us just how much respect the Mandalorians had for their former enemy. The last ship we have for the Mandalorians is the Pursuer-Class enforcement ship. As a patrol ship and prisoner transport, it is technically in the same class as the ill-fated Razor-Crest. But unlike the Razor-Crest, the Pursuer looks like a failed concept of a futuristic toaster from an 80s sci-fi film. It's an unnecessarily asymmetric and boxy ship, but beneath the hood was actually a pretty capable starship. It had a Class 1 hyperdrive, ion cannons, twin blaster cannons, along with a proton torpedo launcher. Despite its antiquated and uninspired design, the Pursuer-Class was actually a modern design from the Clone Wars era. Cloud cars are small atmospheric vehicles that were used by Cloud City on Bespin for security and other municipal roles. The twin pod design of the ship serves no real purpose and were relatively unwieldy to fly. In my opinion, the ship looks like a pair of children's shoes. The Yuzeng Vong were repulsive, and it wasn't just because they were aliens, it was because they were a warrior species that loved to mutilate their bodies in honor of their degenerate gods. The Yuzeng Vong York-Et, or Coral Skipper, was a bioengineered ship made out of York coral. This was an incredibly tough material that looks like space rock. This allowed the Coral Skipper to blend in with space debris and asteroids. Armed with miniature black holes for propulsion and defense alongside plasma weapons, the Coral Skipper was basically unstoppable in the first year of the Yuzeng Vong War. TIE fighters are ugly. It's the nostalgia we have for the original trilogies and all the awesome TIE fighter content we grew up around that makes us so blinded to its clear and tragic design flaws. Now, objectively, some variants of the TIE fighter, in my opinion, looks kinda nice, like the TIE Interceptor or TIE Striker and even the TIE Defender. But there is one objectively ugly TIE fighter that no one is gonna like, and it is this aborted TIE Experimental M1. It basically looks like what would happen if a 10-year-old tried to build a TIE fighter without actually following all of the LEGO instructions. This thing is unbalanced and completely unwieldy to fly. Now, we're told that Corellian freighters are supposed to be ugly and beat up things. But if you think about it, most of Corellian Engineering Corporation's ships are beloved and used by the main good guys. And even though the Millennium Falcon is beat up and old, there is a sense of beauty in its sleek and thin design. So I guess when people were hating on Corellian ships, they were probably talking about something like the YV-865 Aurore-Class freighter. This was a relatively durable ship with a massive storage space, which is why the ship looks so ungainly in the first place. It's basically one large container with two massive engines bolted on either side. It's essentially an N1 starfighter on roids. If you're not sold on just how ugly this ship is, let me just inform you that this is also the preferred slave smuggling ship of the Zygerian Empire. So if you don't like slavery and cat-like alien people, then you're probably gonna really hate this ship. The YV-666 light freighter was the preferred ship of the Trandoshan bounty hunter Bosk. This ugly-looking vessel featured a large boxy container-like front with two small stabilizer wings in the back. This ship looked very unbalanced because of the large storage area, and like the YV-865, the YV-666 was also used by slavers, mainly Trandoshans. You're probably seeing a pattern here now. The more cargo-oriented a Corellian ship is, the uglier it's gonna look. And the Baleen-Class heavy freighter, also from CEC, was bulky, clumsy, and featured a bunch of exterior hardpoints for cargo containers. This ship is completely about functionality and economy, and there is zero attention paid to aesthetics. The last Corellian ship we have here on our list is the DP20 Frigate. It kind of looks like a CR-90 Corvette, but someone accidentally forgot to take the cap off the cockpit. I don't understand why there is a Russian Soyuz capsule instead of a normal cockpit on the front of it, but it's kind of a poor design choice because it is so derivative of the original blockade runner, the CR-90. But if I remember correctly, the DP20 is actually inspired by the original artwork for the Millennium Falcon before George Lucas supposedly saw a half-eaten hamburger and was inspired by its design instead. One might say that this conceptual ship also was what inspired the Tantive 4, aka the CR-90. So actually, the CR-90 is copying the DP20, not the other way around. Lastly, we have a category of ships that are not only extremely ugly, but also very dangerous to fly. We of course are talking about the Ugliest. These ships are usually made up of at least 2 different starfighters bolted onto each other. While some of these ships actually are cool in the same way that Asian fusion food is cool, most of these mass ships are a huge miss. Amongst my least favorite are the Y-Type, which really takes one of my favorite cockpit designs and attaches 2 of the most useless S-foils in the galaxy onto them. The X-TIE Fighter also looks really ridiculous, and there's even one ugly that uses an all-terrain Scoutwalker cockpit, which is completely crazy. So there you have it, guys. Those are my 13 ugliest ships in the galaxy. Let me know in the comment section below if you have a ship that you believe belongs on this list. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.